Hello, this is Vito Quaglia. Welcome to A Matter of Principle, the podcast where we talk with folks about lessons learned in school, sports, and leadership. In this episode, our guest is Wyoming area field hockey coach Bree Bednarski. So we're going to welcome Coach Bednarski to the podcast. Welcome, Coach.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. Glad to have you here. Now, like I just mentioned, you're at Wyoming area, your alma mater. We're going to talk a little bit about your athletic career prior to coaching, but you were, a super talented student athlete in high school and college. You played, at an extremely high level in field hockey, and now you're a head coach. Are there things from your playing days, maybe the way you prepared or things you did to motivate yourself that you now use as a coach?
Oh yeah, for sure. I try to give the girls all of the knowledge that I've learned from high school into college. I try to supply them with whatever they need to hire their field hockey IQ, their physical strength, their conditioning. And I feel like from college, I really try to bring a competitive environment for them every practice and every game. I really try to instill in them an attacking mindset and high pressure play, all of which I learned at college.
Okay. Now you were, your college days, you started off in Michigan, then you were at Penn State. Now, and they're highly, ranked programs and well thought of. The Big Ten is no slouch. That there's quality field hockey up and down the conference. What elements did you see as a player in those programs, but also when you were playing against, as an opponent against other schools? What elements did you see that are needed to make, a field hockey program successful?
There needs to be competitiveness. I just know from teams we've played, the girls that are there to compete. And team chemistry is hugely important. Because if you're out there and you're not playing together, you're not going to play well. The teams that play the best are the ones that win the most, and they all play as a unit.
Now, speaking of chemistry, so that's something where, and a lot of the coaches, that I've talked to over the years stress that all the time, right? You can have all the talent in the world, but if the athletes aren't gelling together, you're not going to be successful. Mm-hmm. Are there things you can do, in maybe your off season or even in season practice and workouts and things to help the chemistry grow? Or is that something that grows naturally?
Well, we try to do team bonding events, to get the girls together at practice and whatnot. But I always tell the girls, you don't have to be best friends, but when we're on the field hockey field, you have to work together, and be on the field. So I think that's a huge piece of that.
So you kind of set up, what you expect out of your players, and so holding them accountable, holding your players accountable. How do you do that and still create a culture where those kids can still thrive? You know what I mean? How do you make it so much that you're not too demanding that they still feel that, they can be themselves a little bit and develop?
Yes. So I think to hold them accountable, you just have to keep them focused. It is high school sports, so the kids do have a lot going on. They have a lot with their friends, the weekend football games. And so I think just keeping them focused on what the team goal is and what their individual goals are, is a huge part of that. And you kind of mentioned, there is a fine line between having fun and then when it's not fun. So us as coaches, we really try to focus on how we could let them have fun at practice while still keeping them focused on what their goal is for the season.
Now, when you were in high school, you were a multi-sport star. I mean, you played field hockey, you played softball, and you even ran track, and I think you threw jav too, track, correct? I think so.
Yes, I did.
So being somebody who, naturally, that's the mark of someone who is, intrinsically motivated. I mean, you wouldn't have done those things if you didn't love to do it. So sometimes as a coach, it's hard to then bring that came so naturally to you and then help your players develop that same kind of motivation. Do you sense any of that, or do you have a bunch of kids in your program that have that same kind of motivation to compete at all levels?
No, we definitely have a lot of athletes that want to compete at that level. I think I'm someone that isn't the loudest person coaching or being a player myself. So sometimes I just hope that the girls like could feed off of the energy that I'm giving them. And because I find myself to be very competitive, so I think the girls like they feed off that vibe that I'm giving them, and they also are competitive too on the field.
Do you have many of the student athletes in your program that play multiple sports, or do you have a lot of girls that just focus on field hockey?
No, we have a lot of swimmers, we have a lot of lacrosse players, some basketball. I'm not sure about softball, but and some track girls. We have track.
So is that easy to manage? Kids that might not be at off-season things because they're playing another sport. I mean, is that? So, I mean, you're used to that as a player yourself, but is that something
Mhm.
that's easy to manage as a coach, or is that a challenge?
I think it's easy to manage in the off season because it's high school sports. Like I want the girls to be able to go out and experience different sports like throughout their high school careers. And they're still being active. So whether they're at something that's ski related in the off season or a different sport, like they're still getting out there, they're still moving, and they're still learning.
Now, in your, I know it's only been a brief, coaching career, but I'm sure you've already
Mhm.
dealt with, college recruiters coming in to look at some of your players and things. Have you? I've heard this from college coaches, but I'm wondering if it's still the same. Do they like to see the girls competing in another sport? Like, if they're recruiting a field hockey kid, will they ask you, hey, does she play softball or run track or play basketball? I'd like to go see her there because I want to see her compete in a different sport. Do they ask things like that?
I'm going to be honest, in my coaching career so far, I haven't had someone ask me that yet
Okay.
about a multi-sport athlete.
Okay. Because I just know I talked to Al Semenza, basketball coach who's been around for 30, 40
Mhm.
years. And that was something that, he mentioned. And he's coached at small schools a lot and had to share athletes. He, didn't have the luxury of having hundreds of kids that come out for his basketball team and whatnot. So he
Yeah.
always had guys that were playing multiple sports. And he felt the same way as you. As long as they're doing something, they don't have to be with me 12 months out of the year. If they're competing and
Mhm.
they're being active, they're going to make, better players for me when I see them. So he had that same thing.
Yeah.
He had, interactions with college coaches, sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I just wanted to know your take because, and again, I think things are evolving. Now you graduated from high school how many years ago?
It was in 2016.
Okay, so 2016, social media is out there, but it's not as big as it is right now. Do you remember when
Mhm.
you were, you know, promoting yourself to try to get recruited? Did you use a lot of social media, or is that something that's completely different, in 2024 for kids?
Honestly, no. I feel like that got so much bigger, the social media aspect of sports. I think that's a great tool now, though, that colleges and young athletes coming up could use to connect and see what's going on. I think it's a great thing, the social media incline of the sports.
Now, you were there, at the really right before the big NIL stuff, started to blow up for
Yeah.
college athletes. Do you keep in touch with maybe some of the girls that you played with that were younger than you that are involved in any of that kind of NIL stuff? Do you know anybody that is navigating through that these days, or is that something you really don't know much about?
I don't know much about it. Um, I do see a majority though of like football and basketball players like online, like with their deals and stuff. But from field hockey, I haven't talked to anyone really about it that's doing anything with it.
And that's even, spilled down into the high school level. I mean, I'm sure it's more
Oh yeah.
prevalent in, bigger schools that have, bigger,
Hmm.
well-known programs and more 4 or 5 star athletes, things like that. But I just think as somebody who, coached a long time ago myself, we didn't have to deal with any of that. So I just wonder how much of a
Hmm.
distraction that could be for kids to worry about how many likes they have on, Instagram and
Yeah.
how many people they influence rather than just, put the work in and become a better athlete.
Hmm. Yeah, I could totally see that.
Now, and that's my next question. So I know it's only been, a half a second here that you've been coaching. You'll be going to
Hmm.
year 3 for you. But do you notice anything different in how you, especially like coming out of junior high into high school, are the student athletes that you deal with, are they about the same as they were 8 to 10 years ago, or do you see any changes?
No, I think they're about the same. I think they have a lot more going on than a lot of athletes did when I was in high school. Specifically field hockey, because I know the kids are always going to all these festivals and these clinics and all this stuff that's available to them, that are offered by college coaches. But when I was in school, we had 2 tournaments like a year that were available for us. We only had like 1 showcase and a festival to go to for field hockey, where you could be seen by these coaches. So other than going to these schools' camps, that's all I had really when I was growing up. But now, like, they have all these combines, and other clinics, tournaments that are offered. So, I mean, I think that's a big difference.
Now I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think when you got hired, in and around the same time, there were maybe 2 or 3 other younger coaches that got hired also in the Wyoming Valley Conference in the field hockey programs. Is that correct? I think maybe
Okay.
Dallas.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So do you, what's it like with the other coaches? Do you guys talk, like, especially maybe the younger, newer coaches? Do you guys keep in touch, or do you just do your own thing and just see each other when you compete against each other?
We mostly just talk like after a game. We'll just catch up and see like how each other is and what's going on. But other than that, not really.
How about some of the coaches that have been around for, decades, whether it's, I'm trying to think, I mean, Karen Klassner and Coach
hmm
Lipsky, and like they've been around, they're so veteran and so seasoned. Do they reach out to
hmm
any of the newer, younger coaches and try to impart any wisdom, or is that something that everyone just kind of keeps their own stuff to themselves?
Mostly everyone just keeps to themselves, but I do love talking to um the older coaches like after games. I love talking to them. They're awesome. We have some great conversations after games. So
Now, is that something that, because, Wyoming area hasn't had field hockey for, 30 years or anything like that. Do
yeah.
you look at other programs from Northeast PA that maybe have been around for longer periods of time and try to, emulate or mimic some of the things they do? Or are you just basically just focused on, what's happening with your program?
I try to focus on kind of what we're doing. Obviously, we all probably like are looking at what each other's doing, but I really try to focus on the girls, and I try to make practices and plans for them based off of what they need and what I think they need to be successful.
So how do you, and again, I was in your position. I was a head coach, when I was in my mid 20s. And at the time, there's a freeing aspect to it, I think, because when you're in the moment, you don't realize that you're not supposed to do things. Like you're filled with all that youthful enthusiasm, and you're just getting after it, and and you don't stop to think like, oh, geez, I wonder, is it? You just kind of go with the flow, and then trust me, when you get to be 30, 40, 50 down the road, you're going to sit back and be like, oh, and you kind of reflect on things. But right now, in the moment, is there, like, do you see that as an advantage where your players can almost, relate to you on that personal level because they're not that far removed from you? And especially, the ones who might be juniors and seniors and thinking about college, that wasn't too
hmm
far away from you. Is that something that's like a bond or a bridge between you and your players?
I definitely think so. I think it's a big advantage that I'm closer in age to them. Like I do think that they look at me as an example, and like there's even times where I hop into practice with them. So like I think being able, like at my age, to be able to do that stuff with them, like there's a level of respect, and me being able to tell them about experiences that I've had, because I haven't been out of field hockey that long. So all this stuff that I'm teaching them is all relevant stuff, and I think they really appreciate um, the bond that we do have, and I think it helps a lot that I am closer to their age.
Now, one of the areas that coaches and leaders talk about a lot is communication. And
hmm
and the thing about communication is sometimes in any group of people that you're going to lead, right? It could be a team, a group of people at work, whatever it is. There's always going to be people that need different things. Like you're always going to have your people that really need to be told once and they figure it out and they get it right. And then you have your other
hmm
people that, you can't tell them enough and they still
hmm
need that extra help. Are you kind of learning that in the way that you coach, that there's certain players that you could probably lean on a little bit more, and maybe there's other ones that need a little bit more of that, like, tougher love? Is that something that you're starting to see when you're dealing with the kids, especially from year to year?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So now after this is going to be the third year. So when I came in, I believe it was the sophomores that were my first year that are now the seniors. So I know each and every one of them like that. Like, I know exactly what they need, like how I could talk to them, if they need to be shown something so many times, if they only need to be told. And then all the newer kids coming up, like, I'm learning about them. And I think that's huge to be able to know each and every player, and because each and every player are different. So I think learning that is the key to success for the team.
Sure. And that's why so much of, what we talk about on this podcast is, teaching and coaching and leading. They're all intertwined, regardless if it's sports related or not, because, the best teachers are really coaching in a classroom, and the best coaches are really teaching what they're doing. And, that one word that you'll hear in education sometimes, that phrase of differentiated, instruction, differentiated learning, where you're reaching every student at their level. And that's basically what you're saying there, that you're reaching each one of your student athletes at her level. Certain ones need this, certain ones need that. And that's really, I think, a huge key in building a program that's not just successful for a year or two when you have the great athletes, right? You want to have a program that every year competes. Even if you maybe have a little downturn, with some of the ability of your kids, you're always going to be competitive. So no, that's pretty cool that you're already on that track, as a young coach. Now, how did you know you wanted to be a coach? Like, when you were in your playing days, did you think, someday, I'm done with this, I want to coach, or did it just kind of just fall into your lap?
Honestly, no, I never really thought of it while I was playing. But once I was done playing, when this became available and I took it, I really enjoyed it. Because at first I was like, wow, I wish I was the one still playing.
Sure.
But when I'm coaching, it's just, I feel so fulfilled, like, being able to show these girls what I've learned over the years, and then seeing them do it. It just makes me so happy that I'm helping them with their field hockey future and just teaching them.
And that's one of the things I think that is very rewarding about the coaching and teaching profession for people that don't do it. They don't really understand it, because every season, every year, it always starts over, and you'll get that opportunity to see the beginning, the middle, and the end, right? You assess, your program at the beginning, or, even before the season starts, and you kind of know your strengths and weaknesses, and then you put that plan together on what we're going to build on. And then you have your, your game schedule, your contest, what you're doing. And then at the end, you sit back and either, it could be a great year, it could be a not so great year, whatever it is. But then you start all over again, and I think other careers that you get stuck, like, people that don't get to work in those avenues, they kind of do the same thing all the time and nothing really changes. So that's a challenging but cool thing about coaching, is that no matter how great or bad it seems in a season, it's always going to change next year, right? You start over. Yeah. So are you starting to see that? Like, are you starting to, how can I ask this one? Like, think about things like a week ahead of time. Like, so if you had a practice, right, and things went sideways, didn't go exactly you wanted, are you then trying to think about how to fix that at the next practice session? Or do you kind of just say, okay, guess what, today was bad, let's forget about it and move on? Or are you, because some guys, and women will, like, start to lose sleep and start to be, obsessive. Are you just kind of rolling with it?
I'm going to be honest, I think I do both. I think there's some days where I'm like, okay, like, that's enough, like, we'll move on, like, we'll forget about that one. And then there's days where I'm, like, still catch myself thinking about our district final game last year and, like, what we could have done different and, like, what we're going to fix this year coming up so that we're not in that position. So honestly, I think I do both. How
much is, like, really paying attention to detail? How important is that in field hockey? I mean, I'll be honest with you. Field hockey is not a sport that I know a whole lot about. I mean, I know there's a lot of whistles being blown, you know what I mean? And I've watched the game, but I don't know that like I maybe know some other sports. So is there a lot of fine tuning in the technique that you guys use in the strategy, from play to play in a game? How does that work?
I think there is. I think like the small details could also be like basically the fundamentals of field hockey. So like your pulls, your jabs, like if those aren't working like during games, it's not going to be pretty. Like it all comes down to the basics every game, in every practice too, honestly. Um, so I think the details are huge in field hockey, whether it's strategy wise or the physical play.
Now, in basics and in fundamentals, youth programs are really important all sports. Are you involved with, going down and seeing what's going on at the junior high level, or even, like having elementary field hockey camps in the summer, things like that? Are you involved in that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, currently we have our elementary camp going. Today was the first day
How did it
and
go? How was that?
Thursday's the last day. It went really well. There's a big turnout. The kids we are teaching them a bunch of basically fundamentals. But it was a great time, and we have it later today too, so I'm excited to keep teaching them. And it was a great group of kids that are at it.
Now, was that available to you when you were that age, or is that something that you guys didn't have, that opportunity?
So we've been doing it for a while. 'Cause I remember back when I was in high school, like the team comes and be coaches.
Okay.
So right now, even my team is coaching like the little girls, and I'll walk around and like see what is going on. Basically, like I oversee them. But yeah, it's been going on for years now.
But for you,
Even since I was in high school.
But for when you were in third, fourth, fifth grade, that those kind of things went around, right? Because at that time, Wyoming area didn't have a program, correct?
I think when I was in fourth grade, I do remember doing it wasn't like a camp. They did it in the 10th Street Elementary School gym. And it was like games you would play. It would be field hockey games, but that's like the first I remember usually doing stuff.
So how did you, like I said, I mentioned earlier, you played softball, you played multiple sports from the time you were a little kid in elementary school. When did you know that field hockey was going to be the one that you'd, pursue in college? Did that happen early, or was that something that happened later in your high school years?
I would say it kind of happened later for me. I grew up first playing softball, which I absolutely loved softball. But then field hockey here in this area, it's such a hotspot area for field hockey that just kind of took over the softball experiences, and we started traveling more for field hockey and doing for field hockey. And I think it was probably like 7th grade for me that it really like the field hockey took off more than softball.
Now, and looking back on it, do you ever think, I wish I, played another sport in college or tried to do more than one sport? Anything like that? Like, I bet you I could have tried, I could have ran track, or I could have played softball in college, or you're like, nah, I'm glad I stuck to where I stuck.
I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I do think about that. I wish I did try to go play softball as well in college.
Is that something? Now, I don't remember. You said you did a lot of travel with field hockey, and I know you did travel with softball. Yeah. So many kids in Northeast PA do that. When you were doing track, did you do any type of invitationals with track as well, or is that something you really didn't do much, like things like that?
So we did have invitationals for track, but they were like through the school. Like I never did anything out on my own for track and field.
Now, what was when you made the decision to go from Michigan to Penn State, right? When you switched it up, was that something that it just felt right? I mean, or was that something you just like, you didn't feel like, cause kids switch schools all the time for a million reasons, you know what I mean? And it seemed like you found a home at Penn State because you were there and you took your COVID year and you were there 5 years, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So you must have really loved it. Was it any change in that, or was it just a situation where Michigan just wasn't working out and you wanted a different opportunity?
I do think a big part of it is my family. Penn State's only 2 hours away from my house.
Okay.
So I think that played a big part in it. Cause then they were more involved in my college field hockey experience, and that made it feel more like home.
So it wasn't that you didn't like the maize and blue. It wasn't a color scheme thing where
No.
you wanted the blue and white. I got you. Well, again, and everyone, I mean, like I said, you can't go wrong at any of those schools. I mean, it's incredible, the level of field hockey up and down the whole Big Ten. So I get it. You really, wherever you're at, you're going to be competing. So, when you were at Penn State, were there a lot of, people from your hometown that went to see you, or what was that like? Was there like a whole Bree Bednarski contingent that would come and see you play?
Well, my whole family would come see me, and my friends did come see me a couple times. My friends actually made the trip out to Penn State when I was still at Michigan. When we came here to play Penn State, they were all there to support me.
Was that like a recruiting tool then? Is that how Penn State got you? When you saw how close, like if I go to Penn State, more people come see me?
Right?
Whatever worked. That must have been like that. That was, the portal before you knew it. You were involved in that. Now, you're looking, down the road. Is coaching something that you think you'd want to do long term, or is it just something you're doing right now in the moment? And maybe you'll do it for a few seasons, or is this something that hey, maybe, I could do this for 15, 20, 25 years?
So at first I wasn't too sure because I have my degrees from Penn State. I have a biobehavioral health degree and a business certificate. So I wasn't really sure like what I wanted to do. And then I started coaching here at the high school, and I'm starting to like it more and more. So now I'm kind of thinking like maybe I could turn this into a career. And maybe in the future coach at a higher level like a college or a university.
Sure. Now, so your first year coaching, you went to the state final, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's a pretty high, shelf to get your first year out, out of the So is it, so you're always going to be comparing every year to that. That's the only thing you knew. And so is that something that you use as a motivation for, going into your preseason, your offseason stuff? All right. These are the ingredients we had when we played at for the state final. Now we have to, I have to make sure I have those kind of things and what we're doing this year. Do you use that as, like a blueprint or a template, or do you just try to look at every season for its own kind of thing?
Well, I think we could use it as a blueprint in some ways, like seeing like what kind of strategies we used or what corners we used. But then I think it is also sometimes best to see what you have because the girls change every year. You lose your seniors after each season. So the field changes, the positions change, and then you still have to focus on keeping that chemistry with new people entering the field. So I think it is good to be able to look at each individual and focus like year to year, but in the back of our mind, like keeping that state finals game like in the back of our head to be able to see like what type of strategies we use to get us to that point and kind of like mix the two together.
Now, taking a little bit of a left turn. So now again, you're at the beginning of your coaching career. You're not someone who's been around the block forever. So everything's so brand new to you, which, so you're probably not looking at everything. But the one really, awesome responsibility with being a coach is that you're a leader and you're a leader 24/7, whether you see it that way or not. Even when you're not coaching your girls, you're leading. You're leading by example. The modeling of what you do in your own life is, something that your kids are going to look to. Even now, you say with the elementary camp, now you have little, elementary age kids that are looking at your student athletes and you as, someone who runs a program. What do you look at leadership aside from field hockey? Do you, read anything up on leaders or what kind of leader that, what your leadership style is? Do you try to say, hey, I want to develop into this type of leader? Have you thought much about that? Or are you just right now, I'm focused on being a coach and field hockey and I'm not worried about, imparting wisdom and advice or anything like that? Have you, started to look at all the things about, the successful leaders out there?
Well, sometimes I think there are like natural born leaders. You can just tell when someone's like in the role of taking charge of something.
Sure.
But personally for myself, like I don't really read up on like what types of leadership styles like there are and that type of stuff. But I do think that there's different types of leaders. I think you have like your loud vocal leaders, and then there's leaders that lead by example, which I believe I fall into that category more so.
Mm-hmm.
But relating that to the field hockey team, like we have some girls that are very vocal, and then we have some girls that are very quiet, but are there to get the job done. So you could see the difference in the two of them. And I think that makes a perfect little situation to have your loud leaders and quiet leaders.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another, aspect of being a leader is developing the next generation of leaders. You know what I mean? So are there things that you look at your players for characteristics to have that you might say, you know what, next season she might be somebody we're going to depend on? Like, are there things that you look for in your players that you want to see in your leaders?
I think to look at a leader, they need to be caring. I don't want that to sound like.
No, I understand what you mean. No, absolutely.
But like they need to care like about the girl next to them on the field. They need to care about what they're here to do as a team. And they need to be strong. They need to be able to be the voice for their team, or the one that sets the example for the team and keeps everyone on track. So that's kind of like what I look for.
No, that idea of, being a teammate, for all the definition that word means is caring about the person next to you, for lack of a better word, for loving what you're doing and loving the people that you're going to battle with, you know what I mean? And all great programs have that. And it's sometimes it's unwritten. It's just a feeling you get when you walk into a place and you see a program. It doesn't even have to be a sports program. You walk into a certain business and you just see the way that people interact with each other, and you can tell that that's a culture that's built on that caring, like you said, that love of what they're doing, a love for each other. And then when you have that, you can persevere. You can get through the really tough times because everyone knows that you can lean on the person next to you. So no, I think for someone who hasn't been coaching for a million years, you understand exactly one of the main ingredients in success. And it's that idea that sacrifice for the person next to you, and that idea that you're going to take care of each other, you're going to care for each other. So that's pretty cool that you went in that direction. So a couple things that we want to do. I just want to make it a little bit more personable. So we're going to veer from field hockey a little bit, do a little bit of tell us about you kind of thing. So is there anything non-field hockey related that you're interested in right now, like trying to learn some new things, whether it's a cooking skill or you just read some book that, you want to know more about AI or something? Is there anything out there that you're interested in right now that's not involving field hockey?
Well, it's not really field hockey wise, but I do really enjoy working out. That's kind of like my go-to thing, like every day that I do. It's like kind of my little safe space.
Well, and that leads into a different question. I asked everybody who's on if there's any non-negotiables, any routine that you have in your life that you do every day, every week, whatever it is, that you have to like get to that safe place. So that's for you. You're a workout person that if you don't,
that would probably be mine.
Yeah. If you don't work out, you're just not going to feel right, and everything's going to be off kilter a little bit. Okay. What about? Is there something that you learned this last season that you're going to, like, if one thing that stands out that we're going to implement this upcoming season? It doesn't have to be like a mistake that was made that you're going to make sure it doesn't happen again, but maybe something that you saw that worked really well that you want to make sure you do again. Anything that you're going to pull from last year into this year?
I think we're going to really work on like our conditioning this year more than we did last year. I think that would really help us this whole season. Cause the girls, they're always doing their stick work and stuff. So something that I could help them with a little bit more is probably their conditioning. Cause that's something we all don't really enjoy to do, but we kind of have to do it sometimes. So I'll be there to help them do that.
Is there somebody in your life that you would say is the biggest impact, the biggest influence on who you are right now? I mean, it could be a teacher, it could be a family member, it could be, somebody you grew up with, but is there anybody that, if I said who's been like a really big influence, a really big impact on your life so far, who would you name?
I would probably name both of my parents as an impact on my life, because without them, I never would have probably went to school to play field hockey. Like, they were my driving factor, taking me to tournaments, taking me to camps, pushing me to be my best, and just inspiring me to play field hockey and want to go to college for it.
looking back on your years in college and also high school, even elementary school, is there a teacher that sticks out to you as somebody that made a big difference, in your education? And it could be anybody.
Well, for both education and just my like personal life, I'd probably pick both from the high school, Mr. Fonte and Mr. Pisano, because not only in the classroom, but they supported me like all throughout high school because they were my coaches, for track and field, but they were always there for me, like always willing to help me out with my sports, with my academics. But I'd probably pick the two of them.
Okay. Good choices there.
Yeah.
On a different level, pizza is big in northeastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Are you an Old Forge style pizza? Are you a round pizza? Are you a sweet sauce Angelo's pizza? What's the pizza that you and your friends are eating these days?
I mean, I'd probably pick round, but I also really do enjoy like the sweet sauce.
Gotcha. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite sports team? And not the Wyoming area field hockey team, somebody else.
I'm going to pick the Florida Gator softball team.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is a pet peeve of yours? Something that really annoys you?
I would say when someone's chewing loudly near me.
All right. And what is there? Is there something that, I'm hoping that your players listen to this and take some time to learn something from it, but also, good naturedly bust on you about it as well. But is there anything that people who know you don't know, that maybe your players don't know about you? Something that, maybe you've accomplished, or something that you're doing that's not field hockey related, something that they don't know about you?
I'm going to be honest. I think I'm a very open person, so I feel like there's almost nothing that people don't really know about me.
All right, Coach. Coach is an open book.
I'm very open with people.
Yeah. Go. Is there, are you a person who reads books or listens to podcasts, or like what do you do when it comes to that? Because I know a lot of people now, that's why I'm doing podcasts, is because some people listen to them. But are you somebody that listens to the podcasts?
Honestly, I don't really listen to them, but whenever
you're going to listen to this one. You're going to listen to this one though, right?
Yeah, I will. I definitely will. But he listens to them, so whenever he has them on, I'm like kind of listening. But like book wise, I'll read a book like here or there. I'm more of a movie person, I would say.
All right, what's the last movie you saw?
I watched 1408 last.
All right. Is that something you do with the team? Do they have, you get your team bonding with, like, watching movies, things like that? Because I know a lot of coaches talk about stuff like that, or, wing or pizza night, or doing things like bond. Do they still they're doing things like that?
The girls actually organize that themselves during preseason. Usually they'll, like, in between sessions, they'll go over to one of their houses and kind of have like food together and like some time together to bond between the sessions.
All right. So we're going to wrap up soon, but how is that? Coaching probably comes naturally, because you played, so the next evolution is being coached. How is it interacting with the players' parents and maybe the booster club and the reporters, things like that, like the stuff outside the off the field, outside the game? How's that been for you? Is that something that's come natural, or is that something that you still have to work on?
I think it's come very natural, and I think that's kind of because everyone else has been super supportive about it. All the parents are very supportive. The reporters, like, they're all so supportive and nice to talk to after the game. So it's very easy, and it came naturally.
Excellent. Well, listen, Coach, thank you for taking the time to talk with us. You in your brief career so far, you've been very successful. You're leading that program in the right direction. We wish you continued success, and hope to have you on again in the future. So I want to say thank you again for coming on today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's Coach Bree.